Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Happy Thanksgiving from Casting Across. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, it is Thanksgiving evening, late on Thanksgiving evening if you're on the East Coast. But if you're listening to it in the days subsequent to Thanksgiving, then still, happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays and a early Merry Christmas. But today I'm going to be talking about some Thanksgiving-related issues. So one, some things to be thankful for that I'm thankful for. Secondly, some shopping stuff. And you might say, I don't want any commercialism. Okay, well, we are on the cusp of the best gift-giving season of the year. And if you think that Christmas is too commercial, well, that may very well be true, but I firmly believe that we give gifts at Christmas because it is a it is a reflection of the greatest gift that anyone could ever receive. And of course, that is the incarnation, the birth of Jesus Christ. And so I have no problem giving gifts. I love to spoil my children. Usually it's with things that they can use outdoors and things that they can read. I love to surprise my friends and surprise my family. And so giving gifts is wonderful. And so I want to talk about a few gift recommendations. Now, you may not be surprised with these gift recommendations. These are things that I've recommended year after year after year, and maybe with a few variations. But here it goes. The first one is not a thing at all. It's to take someone fishing. I would be very happy if instead of a large box or a large bag or something that made noise or something that required batteries or even necessarily fishing gear, if I got a little envelope and it opened it up and it said, hey, let's go fishing. Let's go away for the weekend, or you can go away for the weekend and pick where you want to go. This is a phenomenal gift. Now, given it takes some energy and effort on the back end, especially if you want to leave it open-ended, or some energy and effort on the front end if you want to plan something for somebody. But to give someone a fishing excursion is a truly valuable gift, and I think one that people will look back on. And although you might not remember the socks, you might not remember the sweater, you might not remember the video game or something like that, you will remember that weekend in the mountains or that weekend on the coast or that weekend on the spring creek. That's the kind of thing that can stick with someone. And there's a few different ways that you can do this. I think this is something you can give someone who is an experienced fly fisher. If you are a new angler and you have somebody who is an experienced fly fisher in your life, this is a wonderful gift to give them, especially if it's, hey, you pick the lodge, I'll pay for it, or I'll drive us there, and we'll have a great time together. That's a great way to do it. If it's a new angler, then you can say, hey, I want to go and I want to teach you. I'm actually not going to bring my fly rod. I'd like to show you how to fish. I want to give you, an all-day guiding experience. And, you're not a guide. And, so some people might, turn up their nose at that and say, no, you're devaluing what a real guide is. Well, if you are in a position where you can spend $500 or $800 and get somebody a day or a half-day guide trip, then by all means do that. But if you, like me, think that an angler should be able to articulate the most essential and basic aspects of fly fishing, then there's a very good chance that with a little bit of anticipation, a little bit of preparation, a little bit of planning and thought, that you can take someone who either hasn't fly fished before or is just dabbled in fly fishing, and you can give them the gift of a day on the water with some instruction, with some fishing, with a great meal and some great drinks thrown in. That is a wonderful gift idea. Now, to be fair, this could be a very expensive gift, or it could be, the equivalent of a coupon book where you're saying, I'll teach you how to fly cast and that sort of thing. And but it really can be a great way to pass along fly fishing, give a fly fishing gift, or really give a gift to somebody who has anything. And I would say that kind of as a corollary to that, for the person who has everything, for the person who's hard to shop for, giving them time. Say, hey, I know you were planning on doing this and this weekend, but I've got that taken care of. You go away. Or, don't worry about things around the house. We'll be fine. Go away for the day. That is an enormous gift. That is something that is in many ways much more valuable than a new pair of sunglasses or a new hat or something like that. So that is my first gift, and it's one that I return to year after year after year. Inevitably, I'll write an article about that in the coming weeks leading up to Christmas, because honestly, if you get desperate and it's the 11th hour, then this is when you can, use some nice penmanship and fold something up and throw it under the tree, and it'll still be a big hit. The next kind of thing that I want to talk about as far as gifts, and this is again a recurring theme for Father's Days and birthdays and graduations and Christmas and things like that I talk about frequently, and that is some things that you can give somebody more than one of. And the first one I go to is Angler's Pint, and it is a glass. It's a beer glass. It's a pint glass, if you will. Um, surprise, surprise, being called English Pint. That Karen Talbot of out of Maine, she paints really, really good-looking fish. I mean, these are like museum quality illustrations, or like biology textbook quality illustrations of fish that she paints. The colors are fantastic. The colors last. I have two. I have a brook trout, and then I have one of her anniversary brook trout glasses, and they're great. They come in those pints with, I mean, probably at this point in time, upwards of 20, 25 different fish species. There's rocks glasses, there's wine glasses, there's tumblers, all sorts of things. And this is the kind of thing where if you're like, you know what, my dad, my grandpa, whoever has everything, and so what can you do? Every year, every anniversary, every Father's Day, whatever, another $25 rocks glass with, maybe a six pack of his favorite beer, or, a really, really nice bottle that you picked up, something like that. And they are attractive. They are not cheesy. They are the kind of thing that they will absolutely enjoy. And they're big. I mean, you can fit a 16-ounce can in without having to pussyfoot around that last little bit of pouring. So that's the first one that I always like to recommend. The next thing that I always go to is stuff from Duluth Trading Company. If you know somebody who's an outdoorsman or an outdoorswoman, the stuff at Duluth is fantastic. Now, it isn't as crunchy as some of the other outdoors companies as far as everything being locally sourced with alpaca that have been fed the kale that was grown at the organic farm. That's not what happens at Duluth. But what Duluth has is stuff that is going to last. It's the kind of stuff, at least in my experience, that when people talk about the way that some of these other companies used to be, Duluth is that now, and you pay for it. But if you are somebody who likes to give socks and underwear, you could do a lot worse than getting socks and underwear from Duluth. And I know this is not necessarily the time of the year for it, but I'm an enormous fan of their Armachillo line, and that is like a cooling fabric, and you can get it in underwear, different shapes and sizes, briefs, boxer briefs, etc., men and women, and then socks. And so this is an excellent summer layer that you can use as the Armachillo stuff. But head to toe, I'm a huge fan of the Duluth Trading Company. And again, if you think that you can have too many pairs of socks or too many pairs of base layers, then I'm not sure why you're not using them more. So that is another recommendation that I go back to time and time again. The next one is a good book. Now, if somebody is a reader, there's plenty of book recommendations that you could go to. If somebody is not a reader, then there's also book recommendations I could go to. And without going into too much detail, because there's so much I have written about and talked about before on Casting Across, I would just say go to the fly fishing library over at castingacross.com. You'll find it at the top of the website, both the mobile and the desktop version, and there is between 75 and 100 book reviews that are there. Some of these books are hard to find, and some of these books are new. Some of these books are really, really old, and some of these books are just the standards, the classics. But if somebody in your life likes to read, there's some really good books that you can find there. If they are a reader, one of the go-to books in my mind is Spring Creek by Nick Lyons. Great story, well written, classic book, and that is, it's been around for decades. If they're not a huge reader, but you think a book would be great for them to kind of flip through, have on their coffee table, just something that maybe they could browse through very, very casually, then I would say Trout and Salmon of North America by the late Dr. Bob Behnke, or Robert Behnke. Excellent book. Beautiful illustrations. Definitely worth checking out. I think it should be in every angler's library. And then a book that I would say anybody and everybody, and actually I would say everybody should read if you're a fly fisher, is Healing Waters by Bo Beasley. This is a book that came out the beginning of this year. And if you've heard of Project Healing Waters and its work with injured and otherwise disabled veterans, it is an excellent book. It is one of the few fly fishing books that's brought me to tears in recent years, and so I wholeheartedly endorse and suggest that book by Bo Beasley. And again, all of the books I just mentioned, you can check out over at castingacross.com and see more information and where you can get them. So there's some basic gift ideas, and what I just went through, everything that I just talked about is under $50. Maybe the Banky book's a little bit more, and if you of course, get some really nice stuff from um, Duluth, then you'd be spending more than that. But by and large, it's under 50. Now, if you want to give someone a coupon for a fishing trip, that could add up really, really quickly, or you could do it on the cheap. Just depends on who you are. So those are definitely some things to think about as you are potentially shopping this week. I'll mention at the end of the podcast my most recent articles, including one that had some more gift recommendations. But there's lots of those over at castingacross.com. And some things that, again, if it pops up over and over again, year after year, it's definitely worth it, at least from my perspective. Well, I would be remiss to not talk about things that I am thankful for, since this is being recorded on the day before Thanksgiving and being released on Thanksgiving itself. And I just want to run through a few things that have been on my mind. The first one is that fly fishing for me is and has been, and I anticipate continued will be, an opportunity to slow down. Um, I'm very, very thankful, and I have so much gratitude for my life, for my family, for my ministry, for some of the other things I have going on, continuing my education, just some of my other hobbies. Fly fishing is one of the things that, whether it be getting in the car and driving 2 hours up to the mountains, whether it be just throwing some gear in the trunk and zipping over to a bass pond, I slow down, and it allows me to be in my head in a different way. And so I'm very, very appreciative of that. Are there times where I get intense about fishing? Of course there are. There's times where I'm trying to chase a spring creek trout, times when I am trying to chase after blitzing stripers, times when I'm trying to bomb out a long cast to a big brown rising in the tailwater, where things become laser focused and I clench my jaw a little too much, and it is what it is. And those moments are great in their own right. But I would say, by and large, from me, and I would imagine, I'd venture to say it's the same for you, that a lot of fly fishing is a release. It is a time where you may just be rolling the same thought over and over again in your head. And for me, I truly appreciate that. Um, I do that when I'm running, which I get to do that, pretty much on a daily basis. But when I am fishing, it's a little bit different, and so I really do appreciate that. Something else, and I wrote about this recently, is I'm thankful for riverbanks. Now, obviously, without a riverbank, you couldn't have a river. I'm not sure what you would have. You have a flooded plain, I guess. But what I mean by that is I'm thankful for all of the things I've come across. And I've come across some weird stuff. I mean, whether it be moose poop up here in New Hampshire, bear tracks down in Virginia, whether it was a shrine to a departed loved one in Maryland, whether it be a very, very aggressive hive of bees that my friend and I watched a lizard crawl into their hole, and it set them off, and they went after us, and I'm assuming the lizard went as well. These are things that are just neat to see. Not so much getting stung by bees, but everything that's just very, very interesting. South Carolina ran into an old moonshine still. Out in Arkansas, found a pool with just giant trout that had gotten stuck as the waters receded from the tailwater. I could just go on and on about the things that I've seen that were interesting and curious. But one of the things that I appreciate about riverbanks, especially for someone who fishes a lot of small mountain streams, is how similar and how different they are. I mean, I've fished from Maine to South Carolina. I have not fished for trout in Georgia, but I've fished from brook trout in Maine to South Carolina, and pretty much, I guess, yeah, every state in between. And it's interesting how similar the mountain streams are, but then how there's things that are different. There's some smells that are the same, but some smells that are different. Some things that look the same, something that looks different. The feeling of the barks of the tree changes ever so slightly. The undergrowth, the foliage, the types of salamanders, the types of toads, things like that. The bird song, all that sort of stuff it adds to fly fishing. And something I commented on recently was that, this stuff is fantastic when you're catching fish, but it's essential when you're not catching fish. These are the kind of things that make you say, you know what, I didn't really have a great day today, but guess what? I ran into a mink, or I saw, a doe and two fawns, and they got ridiculously close to me. Or, I spooked up a wood duck, but it wasn't until I was right on top of the thing. And of course, if I would have had a shotgun, it would have been gone, 5 minutes before I even got to the pond. But, that sort of stuff, something I'm truly, truly thankful for. And I really um, have gotten to a point in life where I'm kind of stopping and slowing down and appreciating those things a little bit more. It is the kind of thing that foragers and artists and stuff like that. They're already paying attention to that stuff, and I think I have gotten to the point where I'm starting to pay a little bit more attention to. So I'm absolutely thankful for that. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll circle back to this idea of thankfulness at the end when I talk about the articles that came out on the website this week. But the last thing that I would say is I'm just very, very grateful to my God. And as you know, if you've listened to the podcast at any point in time, I am not shy in talking about my faith. I am a pastor of a confessionally Reformed Baptist church in southern New Hampshire. If you're in the area, feel free to stop by. We'd love to have you on a Sunday morning for worship. But I've just been very, very blessed in this last year. Something I haven't talked about a whole lot on the podcast is how we have moved in the last year. We moved from Mass to New Hampshire, not very long or not very far, but definitely a big change. A lot of remodeling. We have had some highs and some lows. We are expecting our fifth child in a matter of months, another boy, which is fantastic. I am going to be going full time at our church plant, which is a really exciting thing. But that means I'm also leaving behind the church I've served at effectively for the last 14 years. And although I'm close and we still have a relationship, I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for my boys and the opportunity for us to be up in the woods, for them to run around in our 2 acres and the hundreds of acres that come behind us. I'm thankful for a lot of the new relationships that I'm forming, not just with folks in the congregation up here, but also with neighbors and people in the community. And that's another thing that's huge. So if you know my story a little bit, you know that I spent a lot of time in South Central Pennsylvania. And between being in social work and kind of being in the middle of the community and also being in ministry, just as a volunteer, I was in the middle of town and I got to know people. And that was phenomenal to walk down the street, drive down the street, pull over, have a long conversation, just talk to somebody very casually in the town, whether it be in Carlisle or Boiling Springs or and some of the other towns that I spent a lot of time in. And I hadn't had that for the last going on 15 years now. And the life that I had in Massachusetts, there was lots of wonderful things about it. But living now in a small rural community in southern New Hampshire, I'm getting that again. And so I'm just very, very thankful that the Lord has blessed me in that way. And so, I mean, I could go on and on and on about the things I'm thankful for. And I guess I would just close with that before I move into these last few pieces of the podcast. But, thankfulness has to be directed to somebody. You can't be thankful to the ether. You can't even be thankful to a mountain. You can't be thankful to a deer. You can't be thankful to a trout. It's going to look at you, gaping mouth and lolling eye, right? It's impossible. You'd be thankful to someone. So you can be thankful to your spouse. You can be thankful to your children. You can be thankful to your neighbor. You can be thankful to your congressman or whatever you want to be. But you can't be thankful about the outdoors to the outdoors. You can only be thankful to the one who created it. And so my encouragement to you is to think about how you are trying to be thankful if you don't have a God that thankfulness can be directed towards. And I'm thankful that I have a God, and we all do, who has revealed himself in the Bible, but most pointedly in these last days in his son, Jesus Christ. And so as I say frequently on these kind of special edition podcasts that always turn back to the most important things, my encouragement to you is to look to him this holiday season, especially because this holiday season is all about him, whether you like it or not. You can change it from BC and AD to CE and things like that. Well, what defines CE, right? let's not joke about what we're doing here. Anyway, I could talk about this for a long time, but I am also thankful for you for listening to Casting Across, for reading Casting Across, for however long you've been doing it, and I'm always happy to get feedback. So let me know, Matthew at castingacross.com. What are you thankful for? Would love to hear that. Well, this week on the website, 2 articles. The first one that came out was called Casting Across 2024 Gift Guide. So I mentioned 4 things earlier in the podcast. In this one, I have 7 things, with the cheapest being right around $10, the most expensive being right around $500. And these are things that I enjoy, things that I like. There's one that's kind of on the cusp of having a lot of experience with it, but everything else is stuff that I use and that I wholeheartedly recommend. And there's something for every budget in that article. And then Wentz's article was called "Give Thanks for Fly Fishing," and so 3 of the things I mentioned in this podcast made it to that article, but there's a couple things that did not. So if you're curious, what else am I thankful for? Then you can go to that article and check it out. This week's recommendation is another book, one more to add to the list of recommendations this week. And it is Storied Waters by David Van Wee. There is a full review, or at least a more thorough review, over on castingacross.com. But this is a great book that kind of straddles that line. If somebody just wants to bounce in and out of a book, you can definitely read it because he highlights some of the most famous fly fishing waters from Maine all the way over to the upper Midwest. And so you can kind of pop in and read a little bit about it and get some information about what kind of flies you would need or where you would stay or where to get a good burger or something like that. But there's also effectively a narrative that flows through the whole book. So it's a good book for everybody. But I'll put a link to Van Wee's Storied Waters over at this podcast's show notes on castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast in iTunes. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.